So making the Brixton Uprisings, my experience with it was very interesting actually. I learned quite a bit. So to be honest with you, before I made it, I never really knew much about it. It was very interesting, like hearing Michael's story. I would say, like in terms of it, highlighted a lot of like political issues, like that's actually, to be honest with you, still going on now. He's great. He's fantastic. He's really like easy to get along with, um, like easy to talk to. And he's very like knowledgeable as well, like very insightful. Like I love him. Trust me, like you learn so much. It gives you like a sort of experience where you can experience everything. If you're a young person wanting to get involved, then this is like a perfect like stepping stone, especially into like the world of like film and art and creative art.
All right, hi Glenn.
Hi.
Okay, we're just going to talk about the 1980s and how it was for you. So what did you do like for fun? Like what was your social life like?
All that glitters not gold. All that glitters not gold. All that glitter is not gold. This story is often told.
As a black youth in London, the social life was very, very good.
Oh, had a great social life in the 1980s.
The 1980s, my social life was very good. What we did for fun was we got into music.
Music was the thing for me. You know, I was a lovers rock singer. I write my own stuff, put out my own stuff.
So I was doing a lot of music, a lot of work, a lot of music, a lot of work.
We used to go to parties. And we used to have a special parties we call Shubin.
Shubin is when people have house parties, and then everybody, whether you pay to go to the house party or if someone is having a house party, you just turn up and everybody enjoy themselves.
One would argue that it's illegal drinks being sold, but that was the culture. You went and you had loads of fun, and it went on until 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning.
So we're starting to go out, go to pubs, go and see bands, and go to free parties in the field.
Did a lot of raving with my sisters, and my family was really into music, and they used to follow a little sound called Soloid. So I should do a lot of that. They were a Galish sound, not the ragamuffin sound. So if you want to go out and have a nice time, you went Soloid, where all the girls was.
Lots of parties, house parties, and cricket. So from cricket, you go to party, which is Saturday nights, and of course Sunday nights you had clubs all the way over in Stratford. I used to go and listen to Sir Coxsone sound system there.
A thing called sound systems. You know, you have speakers the size of wardrobes. You know, the speakers would be about 18 inches wide, and you would want more and more bass.
For our amusement, we used to have sound system. During the day, we used to go and test music. What we used to call test, we used to just play music, hear what it used to sound like, because we used to do things like sound clash, go and play against other sound systems.
Performing with various groups, finding my talents and my skills as a singer.
There was very little around, so we had to be creative. We built our own sound systems. Some of us made our own music, and we would approach like local community centres, local church halls, and try and hire them and put on our own events.
So did you know like a lot of other musicians of that time, of that era as well?
Oh yeah, sure. Errol Dunkley was a family friend. He was a great singer in his time. We teamed up together.
I had records on the radio and stuff like that. The producer, my first record actually was a cover version of it's called Let's Do It Again. And I did that with a girl called Sonia Ferguson, and that was on the Cha Cha Classic label. and it played on the radio when I was at work, and people think I was earning money and I wasn't getting anything. I mean, I didn't even know that's how it worked.
Predominantly like reggae music, Jamaican reggae music, but also because my roots were in gospel, love gospel, lovers rock.
The popular music at the time that was hitting the charts was more or less anything. Reggae music was big. Lovers rock was a big deal in the 80s. So it was like that was blaring through the households. So
you grew up on
artists like Louisa Marks.
Sherrelle, you have Winston Reedy, guys like that who really and truly inspire me in the music world.
Like Dennis Brown and Gregory Isaacs and Bob Marley.
I used to go on tour with Bob Marley, Gregory Isaac, Dennis Brown, Twinkle Brothers. When did I bring them over? 1981, before the Brixton riots.
Top of the Pops was one of the best things we'd watch on a Friday afternoon and Friday evening. We'd make sure we'd get in front of the telly at about, I think it was 5:30 or 6 o'clock it used to start, and we wouldn't move until it finished.
We used to go and play pinball machine and football machine. That was more mainly our entertainment. At night we would go to community centres.
Listening to music, watching a lot of TV, a lot of arts and crafts.
But I like photography and walking and cycling and...
Mainly played football because I love football. I've been playing that since I was a little boy.
We had several of the youngsters playing for the club went on to play professionally. And the most notable one is Carlton Fairweather, who went on to play for Wimbledon. In fact, they won the FA Cup final.
So what was your housing like in the 80s? Where did you grow up?
Well, let me see.
Asian families were put over there, black families were put over here, the white community were over here. There were council housing, there's a lot of council housing, inadequate council housing.
I grew up on North Pakenham estate. I lived there because my mum moved there. Yeah, didn't really have any choice. I had to go where they went. The estate was like a building site when I moved there.
3-bedroom flat. There was about 7 of us living there, including mum and dad.
A 3-bedroom flat on the second floor of a very small block. It was basically all families in there.
Flat on a housing estate in Peckham. It's called a Friary estate. Looking back, it wasn't the most pleasant of places to live, but in saying that, it made you man up quite quickly. My family, the Millers, were in fact the first black family on that estate.
It wasn't spacious, but it wasn't cramped. I wouldn't say we were cramped, but we shared rooms, maybe 2 to a room.
Quite tight squeeze for the girls. It was clustered, but I think it was good times.
Back then, it was a little easier to get the property, but you was not getting a modern property. They would just give you somewhere where was shelter, somewhere to live. And maybe half of the time, things weren't working, things were broken.
And the housing was pretty bad. We had a lot of derelict land around those days as well, where nothing was being built, and during those days, we could go and we could play.
We could go out and play till maybe 6, 7 o'clock in the evening, and no one would worry about us because everybody, all the children from the estate knew each other.
So being outside from, we're talking like 8 o'clock in the morning in the summer until your mother shouted out of the window to either come in and have your dinner or come in and have your bath or just come in.
Well, Mrs. Thatcher the Prime Minister at the time brought in right to buy. And a lot of people was against it, a lot was for it. I personally thought it was a good idea, but you didn't really know how good, because you have to remember that during the 80s, Britain was quite poor. It was known as, I think, the poor man of Europe or the sick man of Europe.
When I closed my door, my house was all right. It wasn't a palace, it wasn't the Ritz, but it was clean, and it was everything in there came through honesty, and it felt good. Outside of the door was the block. No intercom, all open, weed smokers in the day, crack smokers at the night.
They strive to get away from social housing, so a lot of them were geared towards working for Goodyears, working for the bus company, taking on mortgages.
As a couple, we were both working, so it tried a few years to get the mortgage, but couldn't. And eventually, one of the councillors here supported me in getting the mortgage.
Trying to secure their own accommodation and move out of like these, they weren't housing estates then, but what later became housing estates.
Inflation was high, there wasn't so many jobs around, depending on what kind of jobs you could do. And it was a way of solving the problem, I think. That, you know, if you owned your own place, you pay for it, you look after it, less money going through the state. What should have happened is that they should replace the houses that they're selling.
So they used to have like barracks for police officers. They were called section houses. So I had a room with a sink in it, and then there was like communal shower and toilet and stuff. And there was like, I don't know, about 100 of us who lived in like these small rooms. And then there was a canteen and a pool table and a television room and stuff. And that's where I lived.
That sounds a bit like a prison.
Well, I mean, it's not healthy because you're mixing with the same guys that you're working with, and whatever their ideas are, and the culture in the police was not healthy at the time, and that was again the culture that you were involved with when you were off duty as well as you were on duty.
Thatcher was one of those, came in 79. She propagated and promoted the idea of the non-society.
I think she actually made this country selfish.
Her thing was that you're not a community, you're individuals.
And yes, there was that greed element.
For men and women, married couples, only the man got the allowance. Didn't matter, you know, if his wife worked, he'd get all the allowances. She got rid of that.
Not about your own values, your cultural values. It's about being this individual.
We moved towards that to the detriment of our community, hence we are where we are now.
You mentioned you had a job. What job did you do in the 80s?
I've always had a job. I've always had a job. I'm an accountant.
To find a job was very, 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 very difficult. Menial jobs, yes. I remember my careers officer saying to me, go and become a butcher's mate. Please? And I had, 6 GCSEs at the time? Why didn't she say to me, why do you go off to college? Or she said, go and become a butcher's mate. And that's the kind of aspiration they had for you at that time.
School wasn't much help, for me in particular anyway, in pointing me in the direction of a good career job. It was more the manual thing.
My dad was a labourer, my mum was a cleaner. 2 jobs, sometimes 3.
Oh, at that time I was a postwoman. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to, and that's all that was there for me to do.
I'm a tennis coach. I'm a professional tennis coach. I work in Brixton since the riots, actually.
And I didn't get my first job till 83. Yeah, and it wasn't for lack of trying. Left school with qualifications in all subjects, but there was racial tension at the time.
My actual first job was a job in a factory using a lathe every day, shaving metal. And to be honest, it drove me completely and utterly bonkers.
I got my first job in a factory making handbags because of the language really issue. But I quickly learned and I moved on to work in a nursery.
Applying for my first job over the phone, arranging an interview over the phone, speaking the Queen's English, getting there with my young little dreadlocks springing up, and the guys looked at me and told me like, nah, mate, we didn't offer you any job.
They didn't even realize I was black.
Oh.
So when I went in, I can still remember the person in question.
Okay.
I won't God call his name. And when I went in, I looked up and I said, oh, there's no jobs. I said, why are you saying to me there's no job? And he started to fumble. And I said, listen, all I want is a job.
Maybe I was fortunate. I had a brilliant, lovely boss, which like a sister to me, and very supporting, and I was really well paid.
And it wasn't until I came across an old school friend. He says, oh, I'm working in the city. In London, I'm working for a firm of stockbrokers. Oh, we buy and sell companies. And he says, you should do that. He gave me the phone number of, I think it was a recruitment office within the stock market.
I would say that compared to now, it was relatively easy to get a job in the 1980s, because I remember being in one job maybe for 2 years and then seeing another job advertised and applying and being successful.
The civil servant,
Yeah.
you know, straight into work after school. I spent probably about 2.5 years in the superannuation department, dealing with pension.
For young black boys, it was very difficult. There was a lot of racism around at that time. Also in the infrastructure, they had a law called SUS.
Issue was SUS law. SUS law meant that if I was going about my business and the police stopped me and felt like they didn't want to let me go, they could lock me up saying that they suspect I was on my way to commit a crime with very little evidence. And a lot of us went to prison for things like that.
Now that law was used amongst young black men to criminalize them, to stop them from getting into certain positions, like government jobs.
I was coming home from my civil service work, suit and tie, you know, all looking really trash and respectable. I was aboarding a train to get home in the rush hour. And when I look around, 3 or 4 men was around me. They said, they're trying to say that I was about to steal somebody's purse or whatever. And I'm saying, you're crazy.
SUS was a specific criminal offence of being a suspected person loitering with intent to commit an indictable offence. And basically, the evidence was, if you touched 2 car door handles, like you were trying to break into a car, or you put your shoulder to a couple of front doors, that was enough to get you a conviction and a criminal record. And the black community said that this was the police picking on them for doing nothing. And there was this police officer I respected who I was at court with, and he had a young black guy up for SUS, and the bloke pleaded guilty. And I spoke to the officer afterwards and I said, well, you restored my faith, because I thought this was all racism and picking on black people. And he told me the story. He came round the corner, saw the young black guy who ran away from them. He ran after the black guy, and he said to the black guy, okay, what do you want? SUS or attempted burglary? So he was fitted up for SUS.
Living in Brixton, I actually left and went to Sweden. They charged me for attempted theft from unknown person. Unknown person. I can't prove that I weren't stealing from an unknown person.
You mentioned earlier that people just didn't like the police at the time. So why is that?
Combination, really. Black community because of the way we treated the black community.
I remember in Peckham police station, they would, if they didn't like you, they'll put your head down the toilets. When you get arrested, there was all sort of horrible things that used to happen with our young people.
As a young person, it just felt like I was being victimised, or the people around me, my community, was being victimised because of our colour.
The police were treating black youths in particular, you know, like every black youth, as a potential criminal.
Because we used to go shove-ins back then, and just peaceful partying, but the police always used to come and want to shut down our, you know, our joy, basically. So there was a lot of mistrust, hatred of the police.
I can remember SPG, their snatch squad.
Called SPG, Special Patrol Group. They'd sit in riot gear with albums, you know, pictures of people, and then you'd walk past, they'd look to see if they recognize you. You could actually see them doing it.
You would walk him down the road, you bust a corner, and there'd be a van, SPG, full up with police. They would just drag you in, cuff you, hit you on the head.
We were just being picked up by the police, beaten up, charged, and we were put before the courts, and we had no defense.
They used to jump out their Black Mariah and just take black boys and do whatever they want to do with them.
So even if you didn't do anything, and I didn't, you felt like you did, or you were made to feel like you did.
9 out of 10 times we were convicted for things that we had no idea what it was about. This is well documented.
I know I was an innocent person. He slapped me in my face and said, "Shut up, you black bastard." It was mad.
So was you part of the riots?
Oh yes, I was in the front of it.
Oh.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I was in the front of it.
You have the first one, 81. Okay, so in 81, I knew Biscuit very well. So once we heard what he was happening to him, everybody ran down to the line.
And what was happening to him?
He got into a fight, and the police, while we was waiting to get him to hospital, the police came and tried to arrest him.
The ambulance didn't arrive. The police decided to take the guy to hospital in the van. They thought that the police had stabbed the guy or had beaten up the guy or that the guy had died at the hands of the police, and that was the trigger for the riots.
Nobody quite knows why the rioting started, but when it did, about half a dozen policemen were forced by a barrage of bricks and bottles into this cafe here. They protected themselves as best they could with their truncheons and dustbin lids.
But on the night of the riots, then yes, I was scared for my other black people, if that makes sense.
But obviously the fighting and those that got injured, that was quite sad. It was quite frightening as well.
When I heard it was on, I just went over and had a look and ran because the police were coming after me and, you know, for doing nothing, just looking. But it was needed.
Well, the riots now, I don't classify it as riots. The Englishmen and their establishment and the police call it riots. I call it young black boys were protesting.
It was an uprising. It was the community rising up against the police because of the way that the police were treating them. And it wasn't just the black community, although they were targeted. There were poor white people who were also had a hard time at the hands of the police.
And that was a big shock when you see black faces and white faces going down the street.
So a lot of the working class people together, joined by like-minded people, people who were of all different backgrounds, all different races, cultures, what have you.
There were still arrests, this one emphasising that this has not been a demonstration of black feeling against whites. Several of the rioters last night, like this one, have been white.
Because they thought that we and the white community were divided.
Yeah.
But we had no problems with them. The problem was with
the police.
The police,
Yeah.
and the institution that kept us out.
And I was given 10 officers, 5 plastic shields, and told to clear Mail Road because there were buildings and cars on fire, and the fire brigade were coming under attack from the rioters, so they couldn't put the fires out. So our job was to clear Mail Road so that the fire brigade could come in and put out the fires.
We had got into conflict with the police and with the National Front way before the riots. So by the time the riots had come around, like, we were very, very angry. You know, we were at boiling point. So the riot gave us an excuse to confront and fight with the police for hours on end. You thought till you had enough. Yeah, or till you feel that reinforcements were coming and they were going to seal up the area.
They're throwing, lumps of paving slab and bricks and whatever they can get their hands on, they're throwing them at you. You can't get close to them because you'd get injured. So you sort of had to playing cat and mouse with them all the time. But it wasn't until the next day when I saw the TV footage and realised how dangerous it was that I felt frightened. At the time, I was just so focused on keeping my people safe, the officers that were under my command, and keeping me safe, that I didn't really think about how dangerous it was.
The Home Secretary rushed back to the capital and after consultations went with Sir David straight to the area. He was greeted by cries of Sieg Heil. Before the Home Secretary gave his views, Sir David was given the feelings of some of the young blacks.
Believe me, we've got nothing against the older policemen. They're not causing no trouble whatsoever. It's those little young uniform and those little young silly CID men, right? So bring the age up to about 27.
When we had the shooting of Cherry Groves, it was like things have come to a boiling point?
It was that the police had gone to a house to arrest a brother, and he wasn't there, and shots had gone off, and a mum had been shot.
But during the night, the police went to my mum's house and shot her. People gathered at my mum's house, and the press was there, and all sorts of things. And then there's a message that said my mum had died. So everybody marched down to the Brixton police station. And when they got to the Brixton police station, they're like all gathered outside it, and they was like, oh yeah, and there's all these making noise. And then one girl, I'm not even gonna tell you because I know it is, she picked up a petrol bomb and she just threw it at the police station, and that kicked it off.
The catalyst was a nighttime raid on the Grosses family home. Armed police came looking for one of her sons on suspicion of armed robbery, but it ended in disaster. An inspector shot Mrs. Gross by accident.
Hearing the news, knock on the door, and there's about 15, 20 friends out there, like you're in or you're out, and you know, I just went with it. Kicked off, things are happening, people are going towards the police station, willingly going to the police station to fight the police, yeah? On my way there, I can see people being arrested, being put in police wagons. As they're being put in police wagons, we're taking them out.
Me and my sister came out of Wimpy. The road was clear. There was people standing incredibly still on either side of that main road, where the McDonald's and stuff is now. That main road was clear. The whole road was full, just waiting for a time for this riot to kick off again. And I remember like walking, I'm saying to my sister, well, what is going on?
The riots, I think, went off about 4 days. There was murders, 2 people got killed, the whole of Brixton got burnt down. I've always told people, for me, I think that riot was different than all the other riots. There was, because it wasn't just her, you had 3 of them that happened that year. You had Cynthia Jarrett, and you had Joe Gardner, then you had my mum, 3 mums.
And this is the only thing I'm going to say about the riot, is when the police line off Railton Road and start beating their shields, and I heard those young black boys retaliate with the African sound, hoo, hoo, hoo. That was just amazing. I never forgot that. That will live with me forever. That's all I want to say about the riot.
There was a lot of frustration about watching Alex Haley's Roots and the impact it had on us.
A friend yesterday was talking about Roots. That influenced a lot of us, yeah, and fueled our fire also, yeah, having us believe that truly we are taking on our ancestors' fight.
The capitalist Western world thought that it was perfectly okay to take a set of people from one country, take them to another country, make them work for nothing, exploit them completely, take away their identity, their culture.
We want to change, and it was changed by any means necessary.
So was there change?
Oh yes, there were changes that took place. Initially, there was knee-jerk reaction, and there was loads of money being channeled into Brixton.
They tried to pacify the communities in that all of a sudden money became available, and all communities where young black groups were, they were throwing money at us. Yeah, what is it that you need?
It showed that people weren't going to sit back and be ill-treated. They were standing up for their rights. So it brought the community together, not just the black community, but I think all communities started to come together.
And we run training programs, work programs, community programs, youth club, mother and baby center. A whole pile of stuff came from it.
Really helped the people in the immediate community, and today people are still talking about the riot.
To be there again is one of those occasions where I felt empowered, and I was so proud to be part of it. Yeah, because for so long I've been the victim.
I think it was a movement forward to improve the lives of blacks, non-blacks.
It helped to actually change the way the police behaved. I think it was the Scarman?
The Scarman report. That's when it was first recognised that there was institutional racism.
They changed things slightly because the relationship between the police and the community improved, and it's still improving. There's still a lot to do because it's not going to be 100%, but it's better than it was in 1981.
Now I think the police are more trustworthy and they're more approachable and handle things with black people a little better than they did back then.
She was pretty sick, but she still brought up her 7 children, still cooked food, still moaned at us, still went the same, dealt with us in the same ferocity that she would deal with us when we was younger. But what I found from her was, and I think that's what helped me get through the rest of the 80s, because it was still a negative period for me, was that I witnessed someone from the wheelchair become tall.
I'm a lonely soldier, many miles from home, with a heart that's heavy and a will that's strong. Behind I left a woman so dear to me, yeah. Now I'm off to fight a war that they say will make man free. I'm a lonely soldier. I'm a lonely soldier. I'm a lonely, lonely, lonely soldier. Won't somebody have mercy on me? Yeah.